black folks had looked at the gang wars, like, violence and, so-called black on black crime.
Lack of education, lack of proper health.
350, 380 murders a year that were happening in the city, and most of those people were black men. So you had this frustration going on in the streets. You have people who are aspiring to grow, but at the same time, you have people who are trapped in a cycle. And I think everybody was looking for an answer. They were looking for a way to plug in and make change happen.
You could either sit in jail and be warehoused for 6 to 8 months, or they say, look, you take this felony, I'll let you out today. And that's what they would do when they were warehousing people until they said uncle. And even those who wanted to fight for their rights, they would come out and accept these felonies because their lives were destroyed. They had families, they had children that they needed to take care of. And even though their life was going to be more difficult because they're settled with this felony for something that they did not do, they were willing to accept it because they needed to get back into the community.
For me, the 90s represent
young white officer. You should someone out of the street.
Lord Jesus. All right, everybody, just Haki Ammi here, the Success Scholar, here ready to do this broadcast live here at elifemedia.net. So just wanted to give everybody a heads up. We are going to be talking about Pan-Africanism in the 21st century. Just got to get my water right, and I'm going to have a show here. So hopefully my guests will be here shortly. So let's make it happen. All right.
seeing a sea of peaceful, conscious black men who were present just gave me hope and inspiration that what the path that I was going on was a better path that I know that I need to set an example, not just for myself, but for my community.
Imagine 300, 400, 500 brothers, young brothers, out of university, screaming at the top of their voice, running into the march to a sea of black men. And if you didn't know better, you think there was going to be a war. But you watch that sea of 500 merge into that sea of 100. That's like one of my most amazing memories.
I want to know where the money is. And here's been an audit of the Million Man March, which appeared online in December of that year. So
People join organizations, people start organizations, people went into business for themselves that they wouldn't have done if it hadn't been for the party.
Blacks and child support.
Because the question is always, we need more businesses as people. We know that statistically that very few black businesses, in fact, ones that exist are weak. Because the average black business only makes $40,000 a year, $45,000 a year, and they have one employee who normally doesn't own. So that's a very weak state to be in.
One of the largest problems of why these problems exist in our community existed before the Million Man March, during the Million Man March, and since the Million Man March, is that we haven't built our economic.
Kevin, I guarantee you, the whole world will come to our footsteps and say, hey, we want to invest with you. Nobody on earth has been through what we've been through the middle passage of our life.
Don't worry about it. It's cool. We ain't gonna stress it. And we can change it if at the end anyway. Yeah.
Not only to have those financial investments in our community, not only to create those jobs, but also to be seen, also to stand up, also to work together, which I think really are the key elements of the Youth Forum Plus of the Mind Thinking for the Black community.
Long live the spirit of the Million Man March. Say it with me. Long live the spirit of the Million Man March.
All right. Good afternoon, good day, everybody. Haki Ammi here, the Success Scholar. Thank you for tuning in, listening in. Man, it's a beautiful, beautiful day here, live at eLife Media Studios. We got a special broadcast opportunity to, just share event that's going to be in the next couple of days, but I just want to, as I'm waiting on my guests, just share a little bit. Fortunately for me, many people tend to call me, on a lot of different issues, and I've learned how to balance out my time and how to continue to organize. But what you were just looking at is an upcoming documentary on the Million Man March 23-year anniversary. And so that's a great opportunity for younger individuals and not so younger individuals to listen to some of the brothers, some of the men that actually came to the Million Man March. And so, I'm excited about that. And, if you go to the trail, and I want to encourage everybody to share this broadcast, of course, but also to share that video, which is on YouTube. If you put in Million Man March trailer, it certainly will pop up. And so we are, here and ready to roll, ready to take things to another level, ready to really impact, the whole community and to transform the whole community. And so with that being said, one of the things that, that's coming up here, and I'll mention this as my guest, actually, unfortunately, Miss Viola Green, she'll be in Veola Green, she'll be in a second, but Mr. Lumumba, he may be able to call in if he get a chance to. He's very busy, but I especially did this broadcast based upon, he and his, doing his East Coast tour. He's an actual Pan-African from Kenya, lawyer, as well as worked with the Anti-Corruption Commission in Kenya, and has done some tremendous work and has spoken about the role of African centered realities all over the world. But I'm going to do something. I have 2 books here, and I'm going to ask my producer sitting in to pass me this other book. Let me get that Kidi Wadu's book. We're gonna get some real Pan-African knowledge. Good thing you got that in here. So I'm gonna, and that's always good. You can show up at eLife Media, where all the scholars have been, and shout out to Everlasting Life Restaurant, who has done some tremendous work. But I have several books right here with me. Dr. Anthony Broder's book, Survival Strategies for African Americans, as well as some Naeem Akbar's. So I wanted to actually, because I heard one of the Dr. Lumumba's discussions, and he spoke about the role of, self-esteem, actually. He used the term self-esteem as he describes African people and the role of the Chinese infiltrating and penetrating and, recolonializing, if you will, African people. And he spoke so eloquently as he does, and you can check out some of his clips. I don't want to paraphrase all of his words and works, but, he certainly has done some tremendous work, and he'll be at Howard University over the next today actually, and Morgan State University tomorrow. So perhaps I'll get a chance to do a quick clip of them if I'm able to. But I have a book here with me, and shout out to Brother Chris Cager tuning in. And look what I have, Brother Chris. I have Futurenomics here with me, positioning your enterprise to win in a new global economy. And it's just a coincidence that I was speaking about the role of Pan-Africanism in this discussion, though and this book is actually here, and I'll speak more about that. But just recently, I want to mention I was in New York for a weekend and where we showed the screening of Race War, and that was Brother Kaba, who was also in the film, yes, Dr. Kaba has been in several films, but, certainly rather recently, 1804, I believe he was in that, and several of the Hidden Colors series, and I believe he's going to be in part 5 as well. But this particular race war film, and he was just on the Carl, Jason Black was just on the Carl Nelson show just this yesterday, actually. So so things are getting around. Things are getting around in terms of understanding just where, our community stands. But let me, I'm going to read a little bit of Dr. Akbar's, and then I'm going to read some of this from the broader files as well. And let me kind of flip-flop, but let me go to the intro more, as Dr. Akbar said. And this is critical. And he says, there will be, of course, those who will pick up this book and with the incredulously curiosity ask, what is African psychology? My reply would be, African psychology is not a thing but a place. Not a thing but a place, a view, a perspective, a way of observing. African psychology does not claim to be an exclusive body of knowledge, though a body of knowledge has and will continue to be generated from the place. It is a perspective that is lodged in a historical primacy of the human view from the land that is known as Africa. It is not limited to a geographical place, neither a particular ethnicity nor an identifiable ideology. It is the view that led to the very dawning of human consciousness, and that is the substratum of all that is uniquely human to this planet. It carries the vestiges of humanity's view from the infancy of our being. It is rooted in the prototypes of the ancient Nile Valley civilization and was probably spawned in the garden of what we know as the mythological Eden. African psychology is the perspective of the world's vestigial science, when its separation from mythology and religion was not yet imagined. African psychology is a primal view of humanity's perception of her own humanity and a criteria that is etched into the foundation of a civilized life on this planet. So that's from Akbar's work, and I certainly have copies of these. And this is the Akbar papers. This is more of a collection of many of his greatest works. And certainly, and I have as well here, Dr. Brada's work. Dr. Brada's work, Anthony Brada. And I'm not sure which one he came out with first, but let me kind of read some of that, and I'll get into some of Brother Keaty's Awadu's work. And I'll just read some of these chapters, and I definitely can get, everyone some of these survival strategies for African Americans. Okay. All right. But let me just read some of these chapters as well. So, racism, first he starts off with the mind, body, and spirit. So he goes into racism, white supremacy are the most persistent problems confronting Africans in America. And that's critical. He leads with that, starting with the mind. Become aware of the power of media. He dissects this, and this is why it's critical for us to pay attention to the roles and perceptions and images that the media actually has created for us. And we have to question who's in control of this. Perception precedes being. You are who you believe you are. Information is power, but power is nothing without control. All right? Empower your mind, see the world through African eyes. And this is, you can synergize this between the Akbar's work and, this. So the body. Then it goes into the body and the spirit. But I don't want to, let me just show this book again. And I'm going to get into Keaty Awadu's work, of course. But one of my guests just arrived, and I definitely want to, give her the opportunity to share. And I appreciate, this sister coming on. It's been a long time. I met this young lady. She's out of Boston. I mean, I know we got an African term for Boston. Is that right? A black term? what's some of our ancient brothers, historical brothers from
You
Boston?
know, I don't know what that
Okay.
ancient is, but I do know that we talk about 3 for the stripe, down with the bean. That's where I'm from,
Okay.
Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, city of winners, Patriots, go Patriots. Yeah, go
Okay.
Pats.
All right. So we got Sister Viola
Yes.
Green here, and she is certainly someone who can speak on this Pan African issue. She has traveled to Africa extensively. I'll just say that, and you can share, the specifics of that. But share with us actually what your experiences have been, in your travels. I mean, you're from Boston, but how just what how did you become self-aware? Let's just open with that.
I think my awareness came from the fact that I was raised by my great great aunt who was born in 1911. She was born in South Carolina, and she was a daughter of a sharecroppers. And so the story about who I am and where I come from starts off with her because she actually had whip marks on her back.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
the story about love and redemption and who we are as a people, and the fact that she couldn't speak to her grandparents. Her grandparents actually were one was African and one was a native, was a Blackfoot Native American man. And so the tradition moved on so that I knew who I was early on in life and had some appreciation for that. And as I grew older, the work that I'm focused on right now is the national work around child welfare. That is my background.
Okay.
In public health. I spent a lot of time in the public health department here in Boston, and then I moved about 2 years ago to Baltimore. And I'm still working in my full-time role, but I also have a startup company, and the startup company is focused on Africa, women's development, particularly economic development, around 4 sectors. And those 4 sectors are agriculture, using agriculture to increase the economic drivers for women and their children. Also, security and transportation and community resource development, so community development, using those drivers, one, to build the sovereignty of Africa, build the economic upliftment of its people, both there on the continent, and creating pathways here for folks in the Americas, in the Caribbeans, for infrastructure, job development, career paths, and being able to have a home, a place to call home in the continent. I've gone to several countries in Africa.
Let's talk about some of them. Yeah.
I've enjoyed most of them, mostly West Africa. I'm definitely interested in going towards Kenya, towards East Africa. So Ghana happens to be one of my favorite. Ivory Coast is absolutely gorgeous.
Cote d'Ivoire.
Cote d'Ivoire.
Okay. Yes.
And then I've gone to Burkina Faso, which is absolutely wonderful, in Togo, a land of original people and culture, holding the historical evidence of our religion, of our belief system. So this has been absolutely fabulous experience. On my list next, I'm doing work right now in the Gambia. I'm doing some work around agriculture and post-harvest loss, and I'll spend some time talking about the importance and the connection between Africa, its development, and the development of blacks here in the Americas.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting. So, as I was preparing for this, I was listening to some of Professor Lumumba's discussions, and I think someone mentioned the role of the Gambia. And so if someone, black people here, if they're listening to this discussion and they're, considering working with, various African countries, what would you tell them to, do first? How would you tell them to start?
So absolutely having your networks, and the International Institute of Family Development, of which I'm the executive managing partner and principal of the company, provides the pathways, provides the intermediate ways so that you're able to be able to connect with the right players, the right interlocutors, the right stakeholders. Your investments are secure and solid. One of the ways that the International Institute supports especially women of color, black women of color, is providing opportunities to underwrite their ventures, ventures to partner up with Africans on the ground so that you can have truly by us, for us, and BUI, by us. So that the market that is being channeled comes directly from Africa across the bridges. The other thing that is extremely important to know about doing the work is that it's about the economics. The economics is that we have a buying power in the trillions of dollars as Black
1.3,
Americans
yeah, sure.
here in the United States, and we all know this pretty well. It doesn't circulate very often within our communities. So how can we circulate? And that's the GDP of several nations around the globe. Our consumer buying power is the GDP, the gross domestic product of several nations around the globe. And how can we channel that? Especially as I look at the recent movie that came out, Black Panther, where we globally was able to ignite for a company, a production company that was not Black owned, just had Black actors that told a story of who we are, which was a true story, because the richest, if you look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, one of the most richest places in the world,
Right.
and
Yes.
one of the poorest, where they don't grow their own food. Everything is imported to them.
Wow.
They're in abject poverty, poverty that is unseen of before. So we have opportunities to do this. So one of the ways is that Professor Lumumba unfortunately couldn't be here today because he's been traveling across the United States. He was in Atlanta, he was in Boston. He's coming here at Howard University this afternoon at 2
o'clock.
At 2, he'll be at Morgan State. But most importantly for your listening audience, there will be a free and open reception at Charlie Brown's Bar in Baltimore. It's a Kenyan restaurant. It's a very local place. I want to underscore, it's of the people, a very local place, Charlie Brown's Bar. There'll be a reception on the 19th, on Friday, after Morgan, and we're asking the people to come out, show love, be able to just be a part of this experience. There'll be a moment for comments from the professor. There will also be opportunity for the community just to come and embrace him. I'm one of the co-sponsors of the event, and also I don't want to leave out our hosting organization, the Event Space with Prince Ayotunde, who is helping to organize the events.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate that. And so I want to share a few things since we're speaking about Pan-Africanism and we have some time. So I want to take the time to, kind of educate the audience about something now. Are you familiar with Brother Keedy?
I am.
Yeah. So his book was just here. It's just a coincidence. I planned on reading and some of Akbar's work. I mean, outside of since I knew Professor Lumumba wasn't going to be here, so I had Broders and Akbar's work. But let me and I've been listening to some of his analysis over the years, but I want to look, just go over some of these, chapters just briefly for the audience. And I know he would appreciate me doing that. So he's talking about what is this book is called Futurenomics, Positioning Your Enterprise to Win in a New Global Economy. And first chapter is why should you consider going global? And then green grass on both sides of the border, Africans in the U.S., demographic and consumer, the role of ethnicity in a new global economy, global African diaspora, Black majority nations outside of Africa, for instance, Brazil. We can't forget about Brazil. Moving from global consumers to producers. Afri-Americans as international consumers. I guess he's abbreviating African Americans. What would the world want from us? That's a good question. Expanding beyond personal care. I guess he's talking about the personal care industry. The 6 pillars of empire. Right. The role of SMEs in expanding economic in the expanding economic environment. That's chapter 3. Reporting from the front line, the road to power, 7 steps to global, and this video stopped. The road, let me see. The road to power, 7 steps to an African global order. Living superfood, you got to talk about, throw health in there. Disruptive technologies, major changes in our private, public, and business lives. 39 disruptors explained. Summarizing an examination of disruptive technologies. Africa is the key to transforming our future. Africa Rising, that's his brand, and he talks about a lot. Africa Rising, that's still in chapter 6. Breaking news, global economic prospects, January 2018. African advantages. Africa's teeming masses yearning to be free. Potential support ratio. Land availability in Africa, good question. Yes, land mass, arable land, population density. So, some topics that individuals certainly should be concerned about. Exclusive economic zones. And then you got labor in Africa. Talk about call centers, apparel industry, light industry, manufacturing. Enabling full participation of women, as you say, in the formal economy. Natural resources in Africa. African electrification, Africa going digital. Talk about fiber optic bundle drops, building urban, suburban, rural, LAN, local area networks. I happen to know that because I took a class for her. Developing new wireless technologies. Silicon savannas. McCurry University, the MIT of what is that? Where is that? Let me tell you.
I'm not sure where that is.
Okay, I don't know if that unless that's the McCurry. Okay, all right. I don't know if that's okay. I don't know if that's an African. He calls it the MIT of Africa, so we gotta figure that out. Good governance, what Dr. Lumumba talks about, because I read that he had a position working as a corruption advocate, in Kenya. Quantifying Africa's economic trends. Shrinking middle class in America. Growing middle class in Africa. Urbanization trends and national vigor. Improvement of health infrastructure across Africa. Free trade zones and regional economic communities. Oh man, it's a lot more. Let me
talk
go
for
ahead.
a couple minutes about when we think about good governance in Africa.
Thank you. Yes.
I think when we look at the countries who were colonized, for example, Ghana is 60 years independent as one of the nations. And most of the nations are coming towards the mark of 50 or 60 years. I am 43 years old, so in retrospect, when you look at that, that's the age of one of your cousins. One of your older cousins are in their 50s. And when we look at America, when America was first started, by whom it was founded by 50 years ago, in its birth at the age of 50, it was nowhere near where Africa was disrupted in its dynasties. So I think that part of that is we have to take that into consideration. There's no doubt that corruption exists. There's no doubt that as long as humans are alive, that corruption will exist. Corruption can exist in this country if people look at what some of the news cycles are playing. Where we get a hold of is where we lack the understanding is the Berlin Conference, how Africa was cut up. We lack the knowledge that all of the Francophone countries in Africa are still paying their colonial master, France,
and Haiti, right?
And Haiti,
yes.
And all of their wealth and reserve are reserved in France and loaned out at 15% of their GDP to them and form of a loan to take care of their people. So this is structural colonialism, structural oppression, and I do no justice to talk about this at length, but those are some of the large parts to think about. As far as you were talking about, Dr. Katie here, the International Institute, we're launching and we have a project running in the Gambia that is doing an incredible amount of work, pulling all of those parts together. And we're looking for partners and investors. But let me take a moment to tell you about the opportunity of providing. We're taking post-harvest loss. So, if for those who have had farms, or if you grew up